Shut Up and Dance With Me by Witty Name. Chapter 9. Smile. Pidge! What am I going to do? He whines, fluffing his arms a little for added effect. He's lying on their living room floor, arms sprawled out on either side of him and feet propped up on the coffee table. You're going to man up, they say, sounding bored. He doesn't blame them. He's been whining like this for a while now. He just can't stop. It's on his mind, and so he's going to talk about it. End of story. Luckily, his friends are used to it by now. Besides, he listens to Hunk when he talks about his new recipes or inventions, and he listens to Pidge when they're excited about all their tech mumbo-jumbo or ranting about their grad school classes. The least they can do is listen to Lance when his world is a confusing mess. It's what friends are for. You hate that phrase, he mumbles. Pidge makes a sound that sounds a lot like as they toss a grape at him from their spot on the couch. At the sound, Lance glances up in time to see the grape and shifts his head just a little to catch it easily in his mouth. He's a grape catcher champ. You're right, I do, they said idly, eating their own grape as they idly scroll through their phone, both legs pulled up onto the couch as they nest in the corner. But in this case, I'm using the word man in reference to its use as a short for mankind and the implications of being an adult. What's the difference? I'm not telling you to be a man. I'm telling you to grow the fuck up and don't be a child. I'm not a child, he whines, lips flopping. That earns him a raised eyebrow and a barely contained upturn of their lips. Could have been me, surrounded by sass. You chose this life. This life chose me. Pidge makes a non-committal grunt and heaves another grape his way. He shifts to catch it, but this one bounces off his cheek and rolls across the floor. He snorts and grabs for it, blowing it off before popping it in his mouth. Your aim sucks. You suck. I know, Pidge. That's my problem. Now can we get back to the whole what should I do thing? I already told you. Telling me to man up isn't an answer, Pidge. Pidge snorts. What I mean, Lance, is that you're an adult. He is an adult. Adults kiss people. Adults at clubs kiss people. Adult friends sometimes kiss each other. It doesn't have to mean anything if you don't want it to mean anything. They pause, looking up from their phone to gaze at him owlishly, both eyebrows raised. Do you want it to mean something? No! He snaps, propping himself up on his elbows to glare at Pidge. Then again, yes, maybe. He doesn't know. At this point, he's not really sure. It's only been 5 days since the club, and he's still a mess about the whole thing. Easiest answer to go with is no. No, he doesn't want it to mean anything. He doesn't want it to ruin their budding friendship. He doesn't want it to ruin their budding partnership. He doesn't want to ruin his chances at regionals. He's not throwing away this chance. He's never throwing away a chance to further his career. Never again. And he's just not sure if he wants anything as serious as a relationship. Oh, God, a relationship. Who was talking about relationships? It was just a kiss at a club, a kiss in the heat of the moment when they were both drunk and dancing, and it just felt right at the time. Pidge is right. It doesn't have to mean anything. Still, he can't stop thinking about how he had liked it. Unfortunately, those thoughts are being overlapped with the knowledge that the whole kiss thing might have ruined his relationship with Keith. They haven't exactly talked about it. Lance can't quite get up the courage to. He'd much rather just pretend like it never happened. Like it was just a thing that happened in the dark at a club for like 2 seconds. 5 seconds. Maybe like 30, but who was counting? And Keith didn't really seem like he was willing to bring it up either. Unfortunately, the whole pretend like it never happened thing is making things really awkward. They had a practice room reserved on Monday, but Keith texted him and said he was asked to pick up a shift at work, so he wouldn't make it. Lance isn't sure if he believes that or if it was just an excuse to give each other space, but at the time he wasn't exactly complaining. He didn't think he was ready to see Keith alone in a room by themselves. Unfortunately, that meant the first time he saw Keith since the kiss was at their regular Wednesday lesson with Shiro and Allura. Neither of them backed out of that one, and at least on his side, it was entirely because of his fear of disappointing them. He took some solace in the fact that Keith seemed just as awkward as he felt. Luckily, Shiro and Allura seemed to read the atmosphere and had them focus more on lift and actual dance moves instead of the more intimate things. He was grateful for that. He's also grateful for the fact that they both looked extremely perplexed at the tense atmosphere between him and Keith, leading him to the conclusion that Shiro doesn't know he kissed his brother. Thank God. Pidge, on the other hand, knows, seeing as they were the one who found them making out on the dance floor. And because they're the only one that knows, they get to be subject to Lance's complaints. I don't! Lance insists when Pidge just keeps staring at him blankly. He throws his hands up in the air for emphasis. I don't want it to mean anything! It was just a kiss! I'm an adult! I can kiss people like clubs! He cuts himself off, blinking. Oh, nice advice, Pidge. Pidge's lips curl into a small smile as they look back down at their phone and blindly toss a grape at him. No problem. Lance catches it and shoves it in his mouth. So what's the problem then? He flops back down to the floor. The problem is it's awkward. I think I messed up. Didn't you say Keith was the one who kissed you? Yes, but... He groans loudly, rubbing his hands down his face and mumbles through his fingers. But I don't really remember who started it. We were just... kissing? So I don't really see the problem. Another grape throw, another mouth catch, score another point for Lance. The problem is it's awkward, he gasps, managing to inhale his half-chewed grape. He abruptly rolls onto his side, propping himself up on an elbow as he coughs and pounds his chest. Pidge! He says when he recovers, looking at them with wide, horrified eyes. What if he's straight? What if he's being awkward with me because he's straight and I totally forced a nude kiss on him? I mean, I kind of assumed that I made him uncomfortable, but what if I made him dumbly uncomfortable? Oh my God! Pidge groans, rolling her eyes so hard that their whole head gets into it. They sit up a little straighter and reach up a hand, swatting up the wall until they hit the edge of the picture frame hanging above the couch. Once they make contact, they swat a little harder, knocking the corner enough to send the whole frame askew. He's kind of surprised it didn't just fall off the wall. Slouching back into the couch and looking at their phone, Pidge vaguely waves a hand at their handiwork. Lance, is that picture straight? Lance cocks an eyebrow, staring at them incredulously. No! Pidge, you just knocked it! Exactly, they say, cutting him off. Neither is Keith. Lance feels his entire face go slack, eyebrows rising to his hairline as his mouth falls open into a small circle of realization. A strange heat rises up his neck and his chest flutters with something. Oh! Yeah, I doubt he's uncomfortable because you're a dude. Whoa! He shifts, rubbing the back of his neck and looking away. That doesn't change the fact that he is uncomfortable around me. Lance, Pidge says, somehow turning his name into a sigh. Has it occurred to you that the reason he's awkward about it might be because you're awkward about it? They leveled him with a flat stare, and he opens his mouth to respond. Then his brows furrow when he snaps it shut. Yeah, didn't think so. Look, if it really doesn't mean anything, then act like it doesn't mean anything. If you act on edge around him all the time, he's going to think you hate him or something. I don't! Then treat him normally and stop being a big baby about this whole thing. Not a baby! He grumbles, crossing his arms over his chest and lying back on the floor, puffing out his cheeks as he turns his head to the side. Treat him normally, huh? He can do that. Treat Keith like normal. Keith will relax, which will make Lance relax, and then they can actually be normal again. Then they can find a song, choreograph a routine, go to regionals, and make names for themselves. And most importantly, stay friends. Because Lance actually likes having Keith as a friend. He's a cool dude. Not that he'll ever tell Keith that. But treat him normally? Yeah, Lance can do that. So do you think he's hot? Lance isn't eating a grape at the moment, but that doesn't stop him from choking on air. He props himself up again. What? Pidge is looking at him, amusement in their small smile, and both eyebrows are raised. Keith, do you think he's hot? Lance snorts and rolls his eyes, leaning more on one elbow to wave his other hand vaguely in the air. I think all my friends are hot. I'm friends with some really pretty people. Mm-hmm. Their smile quirks a fraction wider. I mean it, look at Hunk. He's a gorgeous chunk of man. Gorgeous and beautiful inside and out. I then do I really need to bring up Shiro and Allura? I mean, they pretty much hold the top spots for most beautiful people. And Corinne, I mean, yeah, he's the oldest of us, but he pretty much holds the spot for most handsome and poised. And you! He glares as he points a finger at them. Their smile drops, eyes narrowing. Don't you dare! They whisper. You! He repeats, jerking his finger toward them for emphasis as he speaks in a low, threatening voice. Or adorable! Let's! Their voices are warning. I mean, the Pidge is the cutest fucking human on the entire planet! He cuts himself off with a loud yelp of surprise as Pidge tosses their phone and grape ball aside and launches themselves at him. He tries to scramble backwards, but it's too late. They slide across the coffee table and land on top of him, scrambling across him. He's screaming, trying to push them off, but they're small and slippery as they struggle to coil their body around him and get him into a headlock. You take that back! Never! Lance isn't sure how long they spend rolling around on the floor, but by the time Hunk gets home, he's exhausted, sweating, sore, and has several bite and claw marks because Pidge fights dirty like the little troll they are. Hunk! Save me! SOS! Life alert! Lance calls the second he hears the door open. Much to his dismay, Hunk takes his time, closing the door, kicking off his shoes, and setting some grocery bags in the kitchen before heading into the living room. When he does, he stops and stares. Pidge has their legs locked around his ribcage, squeezing the life out of him, and their arms putting him in a headlock. He has one hand wrapped around their arm, trying to pull it off his neck, and his other hand is behind him, fingers curled into their hair. He's lying on top of them, having used his superior weight to flip on top of them and hoping he could get them to let go by crushing their lungs, but apparently they're made out of tougher stuff, like pure determination, stubbornness, and rage compacted in one tiny human. What's going on? Hunk asks, not making any moves to come to his rescue. I called them cute and now they're trying to kill me! He scratches, nails digging into their arm. They retaliate by biting his shoulder. He yelps, ow! They're biting me! Hunk! Take it back! No! Oh, but Pidge is cute. Pidge freezes, and the suddenness of it causes Lance to still. The moment only lasts a second before Pidge has detached themselves from him, wiggles out from under, and then launches themselves at Hunk! The poor guy stares wide-eyed as Pidge scrambles towards him on all fours, trying to get their feet onto them. He throws up his hands and scrambles back several steps. Lance uses his newfound freedom to launch himself after them, wrapping them up in his longer limbs and bringing them back to the floor. They claw the carpet, trying to get away from him, but it gets them nowhere. I got you, Hunk! Lance says and hugs Sai's entire body, relaxing. Thanks, buddy. He crouches in front of Pidge. But really, Pidge, you're adorable, he says, reaching out to ruffle their hair. They make an odd growling sound and swipe at him. There's the loud sound of flesh slapping flesh, followed up by Hunk's yelp, and the big guy is suddenly cradling his head to his chest. Take it back! They shout. Accept it! Lance shouts louder. No! Yes! Pidge thrashes wildly, but Lance uses his weight and position to his advantage to keep them bend. They finally groan loudly, entire body going slack, arms stretched out in front of them as they bury their face into the carpet. You guys are the worst! Hunk pats their head. We love you too. Lance sighs, letting his body go lax, which only crushes Pidge a little more, and they let out a grunt of annoyance. So, not that I'm particularly surprised to come home to find you guys like this, but what started it this time? Hunk asks. Pidge lifts a hand, gesturing at Lance with a thumb over their shoulder. I asked Lance if he thinks Keith is hot, and he made up a bullshit cover by saying all his friends are hot. Lance lets them go, pushing himself to his knees and throwing his arms up in the air. They are! I have very attractive friends! Hunk nods sagely, but Pidge just snorts, lifting themselves up onto their elbows to shoot a look at Lance, a mischievous glint in their eyes as they smile sweetly. So you do think he's pretty? Lance glares at them. Yeah, by default, because all my friends are pretty. But Keith is extra pretty, right? No! But you don't go around kissing all of us. Hunk gapes at them, wide eyes snapping to Lance. You kissed Keith. Lance glares at Pidge, heat rising through his cheeks under the weight of Hunk's gaze. Pidge! They smile innocently. What? It's true? You don't go around kissing me or... Lance's lips curl into a smirk and Pidge's eyes widen, their own smile fading. They scramble away from him. Lance! No! He slowly crawls forward, eyes never leaving Pidge's as he smiles with the same false innocence they had used on him. Pidge, come here! He sing-songs. They scramble away from him. Oh, heck no! Pidge, get back here! He chases them around the apartment, over the couch several times, around the dining room table. He thinks he corners them in the kitchen for a moment before they scramble over the bar counter and escape into the dining room before sprinting to their room. They slam the door behind them. Bitch! He shouts, running after them, only to be grabbed by Hunk. Okay, but I'd like to backtrack for a moment and get back to you kissed Keith. Lance groans loudly and flops face down onto the couch. He can hear Pidge laughing from their room. 30 minutes later, Lance has explained the whole situation to Hunk, with a few woe is me laments for good measure. Hunk is sitting on the couch listening and nodding when appropriate. Lance has laid with his head on Hunk's lap, twisted so his legs could hang over the back of the couch. Pidge has crawled out of their lair and taken a seat on the other side of Hunk, leaning up against his arm and playing on their phone while occasionally adding commentary. Whoa, Hunk says when he's done, and Lance has nothing to say to that, so he just nods. Whoa is right. So, what are you gonna do about it? He shrugs, tilting his head to look across the room. It didn't mean anything, and I don't want it to mean anything, so I'm going to be an adult and act normal around him. Pidge snorts. Great idea, Lance, they said dryly. Wonder when you came up with that. I'm filled with great plans, he said, reaching a hand back to flick them in the air. Okay, but you're not going to be, awkward tonight, are you? Lance turns a suspicious glare to Hunk. What's that supposed to mean? Hunk looks up, rubbing the back of his neck. It means you're, you. And with Keith coming over tonight, I don't want it to be awkward. Why would it be awkward? I just told you I was going to treat him normally. He means he doesn't want to deal with your unresolved sexual tension. Pidge cuts in, matter-of-factly. There's nothing to resolve. We're just friends. They both give him blank stares, and he glares at them. I'm serious. Just friends, and I'll be totally normal. You'll see. No awkwardness, no tension. I'll be chill. Cool as ice. I got this. Pidge snorts, and Hunk hums, though it sounds skeptical. As long as someone doesn't bring it up, everything will be fine. He tries again, flicking Pidge again. They oddly swat his hand away. I won't say anything, they grumble. Hunk, Lance says warningly, narrowing his eyes up at his best friend. Hunk puts his hands up in the air in a defensive gesture. My lips are sealed, buddy. And then he mimes the gesture. Good! He nods, crossing his arms over his chest. He's quiet for a moment, and then he says, besides, no matter what happens with me and Keith, there's no way we can be as bad as Shiro and Allura. Right? Hunk says at the same time. Pidge groans. Oh my god, I know! Lance laughs, feeling lighter already now that the focus is off of him. Seriously though, how long have they been dancing around each other? Pun intended. Hunk asks. Totally intended. Nice. They high-five, and Pidge groans. Puns aside, it's been way too long. I don't even remember Shiro before his crush on Allura. Hunk raises an eyebrow. Haven't you known Shiro for, most of your life? Pidge throws their arms up in the air. Exactly! At first it was funny, but now it's just pathetic. One of these days, Lance says wistfully. Pidge snorts. Yeah, I'll be old and gray before that happens. If there's one thing in life that Keith has never been very good at, it's resisting his impulses. He's always just been a little too impulsive, acting on reflexes and considering the consequences later when he's forced to face them. Well, now he's forced to face them as they present themselves in the form of an extremely awkward Lance and an entirely too uncomfortable atmosphere. When he had kissed Lance, he hadn't been thinking about how it would affect their friendship. He hadn't been thinking about how it would affect their dancing partnership. He didn't think about how it would affect them at all. He hadn't been thinking at all. All he had known was the fact that Lance was sad and distracted and making these pitiful faces that tugged hard at his heart. All he had known was that those faces faded when Lance focused on him. All he knew was that he was making Lance smile again, and all he wanted at the time was for Lance to smile. They had been so close, and the atmosphere had been so intimate, and it had just felt right. So he had kissed her. Well, sort of. He had initiated the idea, he's pretty sure. But he can't quite remember who actually kissed who first. They were just suddenly kissing each other. It was a short kiss. Only like 5 seconds. Maybe 15. Maybe half a minute? Who was counting? All he knows is that it ended too abruptly when Pidge came hurtling through the crowd at them with Shiro hot on their trail. That he and Lance didn't get intimate again that night. That he somehow ended up with a globe bracelet on his wrist, if only to make Lance smile again. That he got home and passed out fully clothed. That he woke up the next day with a pounding headache and feeling gross all over. That he kept repeating that night, the kiss, and everything that led up to it over and over again in his mind while he laid on his bed, suffering. That he had liked it. He didn't regret what he had done, but he was starting to wish Lance hadn't remembered. It would be a lot easier to pretend like it hadn't happened and let it drift away like a barely remembered dream. As he sits astride his bike, gazing up at Pidge and Hunk's apartment complex with growing apprehension, he really hopes they can get back to normal soon. He misses normal. He misses hanging out with Lance without all the tension. He misses seeing him smile genuinely. He misses the casual touches that don't mean anything. He misses the way Lance's eyes spark with challenge or sparkle when he teases. He misses the playful pouts. Hell, he even misses the cocky smirks. Anything is better than the Lance that treats him like he's afraid he'll blow up at any moment. He wants Lance back. And as much as he had enjoyed that kiss, as much as it had just felt right, he's starting to wish he had more self-control. Would he do it again? He's not sure. He wants to say no. He really doesn't want to ruin this friendship or partnership or make things any more awkward than they already are. But at the same time, if the opportunity presented itself, he's not sure he could say no. Does he want a relationship? Hell no. Does he like kissing Lance? Unfortunately, yes. God damn, he hates feelings. Too fucking problematic. He didn't sign up for this. Infatuation is one thing. He can get over infatuation. He's done it plenty of times before. Think a guy is attractive? Fine. Give it a few weeks and it's faded to nothing. Unfortunately for him, making out with the subject of that infatuation isn't exactly helping to keep those feelings from reaching the crush zone. That, unfortunately, hasn't stopped him from replaying the kiss over and over again every time he finds himself with a free moment. When he's trying to sleep, when he's trying to work, when he's driving. He just really wants things to calm down again, which would be easier if he wasn't so awkward, and Lance wasn't so awkward, and that didn't make him even more awkward. He spends approximately 3 minutes just sitting on his bike and staring up at the apartment, wondering if he should just dip out before his phone buzzes. Talk on, motherfuckers. Keith, I can see you out there. Now get your ass up here. I'm hungry, and Hunk won't let us eat before you get here. He sighs, shoving the phone back in his pocket. Guess there's no getting out of it now. Hunk and Pidge had invited him to hang out last week before the whole club thing happened. It would look weird if he canceled on them now. Besides, if he wants the kiss to have meant nothing, he's got to act like it meant nothing, right? Right. And that's how he finds himself outside the door to Pidge and Hunk's apartment, running his fingers through his hair and sighing to himself before lifting a hand to knock. The door swings open before his knuckles can even make contact, and he finds himself face to face with Lance. Keith! He says a little too loud, and Keith can't stop to flinch. Buddy, friend, buddy, pal, friendo, homeo, bromeo, how you doing? He says with strained enthusiasm, voice pitched a little too high. Holding the door open wide with one hand, he rests his other forearm against the door frame and leans into it. He smiles the smile that Keith knows is supposed to be charming, but honestly just looks a little too tight and doesn't reach his eyes. he says intelligibly, hand hanging awkwardly in the air for a moment before letting it drop. He shoves his hands in his pockets to keep from fidgeting. I was invited over. Great. Off to a wonderful start. Right, Lance says, lifting his hand off the door to point the finger gun at him. He taps it with a wink, but the overall effect looks so much like a cringe that Keith is just left staring. He doesn't know how to deal with this. This is even weirder than normal. This is a new level of awkward Lance that he isn't prepared for. I knew that! He continues, laughing in a way that's so strange that it's painful to hear. He trails off and the two are just left staring at each other. So, he starts, then clears his throat, lifting a hand to rub the back of his neck. Are you going to let me in? Lance blinks once, twice. His smile falls, and then his hand is back on the door, shutting in a fraction. What's the password? Keith blinks. What? Lance rolls his eyes, and the smile that curves his lips looks 100 times more natural. I said password, Keith! What's the password? Keith's lips press into a thin line, eyes narrowing a fraction as his hand drops to his side. Pidge didn't say anything about it. Door's closing, Keith! Lance sings, stepping back as he slowly starts to shut the door. Lance, nope, sorry, that's not it. The door is nearly closed when Keith's hand shoots out to stop it. Lance, password, Keith! Lance! Yeesh, you're terrible at this! Okay, repeat after me. Lance is the greatest. No. Oh, look, the door is slipping! Keith tries to shove the door open, but Lance leans on it from the other side, using the rest of his body to block the open space so Keith can't slip in. He's grinning that shit-eating grin, and Keith wonders why he missed that stupid grin. He grits his teeth. Lance, let me in. Say the words, Keith! No. Yes! Keith looks at him, brows pinched and lips pursed into a small frown. With how they're both leaning against the door, they're surprisingly close. He tries not to think about that as he holds eye contact and mumbles a reluctant, Lance is the greatest. He tries to make his voice as dry and deadpan as he can, but there's this strange fluttering in his stomach at those words that he doesn't really want to analyze too much. Lance's grin drops almost immediately, face freezing in an almost comical way. And Keith thinks there might be a blush darkening his cheeks, but before he can really tell, Lance has stepped away from the door and Keith is falling through. His eyes widen as he stumbles into the entranceway, throwing a glare over his shoulder as he straightens. Sorry, Lance mumbles, closing the door. And then he's slipping past Keith, giving him an oddly wide berth as he hurries past the kitchen and into the living room. Keith's here! We know, Lance! Pidge grumbles. Hey, Keith, Hunk says, a smile wide and warm as Keith pauses in the kitchen entrance. Keith smiles back, small and sincere. Hey, Hunk, need a hand? Hunk snorts a short laugh. No, that's Shiro. It takes Keith a moment to realize what he meant, and when he does, he rolls his eyes. He leans against the wall at the entryway to the kitchen, crossing his arms over his chest as he deadpans. Fuck off. Hunk jerks a little, startled, and stares at him with wide eyes, mouth agape. Keith can feel the small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Hunk must see it too, because his look of startled alarm shifts to surprise. Oh my god, he mumbles. Keith, did you just... Keith's smile widens, one eyebrow going up. Hunk grins. Keith, you just made a joke. Guys, Keith made a joke. I've told you guys he's secretly funny, Lance calls out from the living room. He just hides it under all that emo. Almost like humor is a last resort. Keith doesn't need to see his face to know he's wearing that shit-eating grin. Ooh, good one, Lance. Hunk laughs. He can hear Pidge's groan mingling with his own before he hears their voice. I'm way too hungry for this. Can we please eat now? I don't want to have to resort to eating Lance. He's all skin and bone. Excuse! This is all muscle. Lean, sculpted muscle. Pidge snorts. Yeah, sure it is, string mean. Hunk shoots Keith an amused wry smile before gesturing to the plates and food he has set up on the counter. Mine's helping me carry this out there before they kill each other. Keith raises an eyebrow. Would that really be such a bad thing? Hunk taps his chin, thoughtful.
As amusing as it would be to watch, I don't want to have to pay rent alone. Keith hums. Fair enough. Dinner that night consists of the most intense loaded nachos Keith has ever seen. They brought out 2 trays of it, setting them on the coffee table. Everyone had their own plates and they picked what they wanted. There was so much that Keith gave in and used a fork, along with Hunk. Lance and Pidge, however, went barehanded, calling Hunk and Keith weak before exchanging a very messy half-half. While they ate, they watched Shrek. When Keith questioned it, Pidge whispered a quiet, "Don't!" before Lance was set off in a speech that sounded half prepared and half like he was pulling it out of his ass. Something about true fairy tale romance, a thrilling saga of character growth, and ending with, come on, who wouldn't want to be cradled in those big green ogre bara arms? At that pitch, Hunk and Keith all silently raised a hand. It's not too bad, and after Keith finishes eating, he settles back into the couch feeling far too stuffed to move. The others seem to echo that sentiment. Lance, he notices, manages to sit as far away from his as possible. He tries not to let that get to him. All in all, Lance isn't as awkward as he was expected. But Keith feels like he's on a never-ending roller coaster. 1 minute Lance is fine and joking with him like normal. The next he won't make eye contact. 1 moment he's grinning. The next his smile is too tense and won't reach his eyes. 1 moment he's teasing Keith and the next he won't even talk to him. 1 moment they're fine and normal. And the next everything is awkward. And when he's not avoiding him altogether, he thinks at Keith in a way that's reminiscent of when they first met. And then it hurts. He always laughs it off like he doesn't realize he's being antagonistic, but Keith hates it. It's weird, it's hectic, and Keith is tired of it. He's pretty sure Pidge and Hunk feel the tension too because they keep sending Lance looks whenever he gets weird and apologetic smiles to Keith. Keith really fucking hopes they don't know why Lance is being so weird. When Robin Hood comes on screen, Lance leaps up and claims the open space in the living room to do his own theatrical rendition of the song. Hunk stays on the couch but does the Merry Men vocals for him, complete with clapping hands and an array of expressions. Pidge sits next to him, phone in their hand, to record both. Keith isn't sure how they got it ready so fast, but he supposes being with these two a lot keeps them on their toes. As soon as Lance and Hunk realize Pidge is recording, they start performing for the camera. Pidge keeps their feet and clapped over their mouths to stifle their giggles. Keith hasn't seen this movie in years. He hasn't thought about it in years. But that doesn't change the fact that he and Shiro used to watch it when they were kids. And because of that, he knows exactly how Hood's song ends. Lance has been avoiding looking at him for nearly 20 minutes, even while performing, and now his attention is on Pidge and their phone, so he doesn't notice when Keith slips off the couch, one of the couch pillows in hand. Keith slowly creeps around the coffee table and positions himself just behind Lance's peripheral vision. Not that he needs to bother. Lance is so wrapped up in his performance and interacting with Hunk for Pidge's entertainment. Pidge, however, does see him. He sees it in the way their eyes flicker to him briefly, in the way their lips curl a little higher. Then Hood's song comes to an end, and Lance brandishes a fork that he had scooped off the table at Pidge while holding out the long last note, and then right when Fiona cuts off Hood's song with a kick, Keith slaps Lance in the side of the head with a pillow. Lance goes down with a startled yelp, and Pidge rises out laughing, followed shortly after by Hunk. Keith grins down at Lance, but he doesn't lose it until Lance looks up at him, pillow clutched in his hands, expression torn between an offended scowl and a pout. When Keith's gone, he bends at the waist, eyes squeezing shut as laughter bubbles out of him. One arm wraps around his middle, but the other has to rest against his knee to keep himself from toppling over. He feels moisture gathering at the corners of his eyes. Then there's suddenly a pillow hitting him in the face. His laughter chokes off as he straightens, but he barely manages to toss the pillow away before Lance is tackling him. They both go down, Lance on top, scrambling to pin him. Keith pushes at him, his face, his shoulders, shoving his legs with his own. Lance is slippery and all limbs, and every time Keith pushes at him, he bends to avoid the actual shove, like a goddamn cat. Keith finally gets a leg around him and manages to flip the positions, but Lance doesn't stay down for long. Every time he thinks he's got an advantage, Lance flips it on him. Luckily, he's able to do the same. Unfortunately, that leads to neither of them winning and mostly just rolling around on the floor in a fit of chaotic limbs, grunts, and half-muttered insults. Distantly, he realizes that if they keep this up, one of them is going to end up getting hurt. At the least, they're going to end up dislocating a shoulder or spraining a wrist or knocking an ankle out of alignment. He can hear Pidge and Hunk talking in the background, but he can't focus on them when Lance is so close, growling insults and complaining in his ear. Keith has taken martial arts for years. He goes to the gym regularly, and he thinks all of that combined with dancing gives him a pretty good understanding of his body and how to use it to his advantage. All of that means nothing when he severely underestimated Lance's ability to just be squirrely and get out. When Lance has managed to have him pinned for nearly 5 minutes and none of Keith's struggles do him any good, he finally huffs in annoyance and lets his body go slack. It takes another 30 seconds before Lance relieves him. He sits back on Keith's thighs, straddling his hips. He puts his hands on Keith's shoulders to prop himself up as he grins down at him, a victorious twinkle in his eyes. Pidge! Keith huffs again, blowing his bangs out of his eyes as he scowls up at Lance. Good job, he says dryly. Now can you get off me? Hold on, I'm just basking in my victory, he says, grin sharpening into a smirk. Keith just glares at him. Oh man, I'm so glad we got that on video, Pidge says, and both of their heads snap up to stare at them. Pidge's phone is still aimed at them, and Keith sees Lance's smile widen. He sits back, lifting his hands to pose, flexing for the camera. Keith rolls his eyes before planting his feet and bucking his hips sharply upward. Lance yelps, jostled, but manages to stay where he is. He flaps back down, hands landing on either side of Keith's head to catch himself, and suddenly it dawns on him just how close they are. He can see the realization come to Lance at nearly the same time. His eyes widen a fraction, lips parting as his jaw goes slack. A multitude of emotions passing over his face, but all gone before Keith can pinpoint them. Then he presses his lips together and his Adam's apple bobs as he swallows thickly. Keith's mouth feels dry. He blinks, and suddenly Lance is off of him, scrambling to his feet and taking several hurried steps backwards. Ha! Yeah, so anyway, I win! You suck, Keith! He babbles, voice pitched a little too high for his nonchalance to be realistic. That and the fact that he refuses to look at Keith even when attempting to goad him. Well, why am I thirsty? Anyone else thirsty? I'm going to go to the kitchen. Don't worry about pausing the movie. He's been slowly taking a few steps back, but with that he turns on his heel and scuttles out of the room, leaving the rest of them staring after him in surprised silence. Silence that's getting thicker and tenser by the second. Pidge and Hunk look like they're torn between giving him apologetic smiles and avoiding looking at him altogether. I should take these to the kitchen, Hunk says a little too loudly, reaching for the nacho trays as he starts to stand. I got it, Keith says, on his feet and swiping the trays away before he really knows what he's doing. But Hunk's cut off by a Pidge elbow to the side, and Keith leaves before he can really dwell on the fact that both of them probably know. He's not really sure what he's going to say. It's not like he was planning on having this conversation, but he's had enough, and he's tired of it. He's tired of Lance being weird. He's tired of feeling like he has to be on eggshells around him. Being impulsive got him into this mess, and he hopes being impulsive will get him out of it. When he gets to the kitchen, Lance is bent over behind the fridge door. Keith steps in, drops the trays loudly into the sink, and turns around in time to see Lance jump and straighten, spinning around to stare at him wide-eyed. Jeez! Keith crosses his arms over his chest, leaning back against the counter. Lance fidgets, eyes darting around the kitchen. What are you doing here? Not that you can't be here. Obviously, you can come to the kitchen if you want to. His words are quick and hurried, and he grabs a can of Coke from the fridge before closing it. I was just getting a drink, but I'll be Lance. Keith repeats, maybe a little too sharply, and Lance freezes mid-step, finally looking at him with wide eyes. Keith's eyes holding eye contact as he tries to work up the courage to say what he needs to. He can feel his lips working, pressing and relaxing, tugging downward. Lance relaxes a bit, standing a little straighter, brows pinching, small frown on his lips. Keith, what are you? We kissed, he blurts because apparently, when he can't quite figure out what to say, he says it bluntly. He's making hard eye contact with Lance, so he sees the moment Lance freezes, mouth snapping shut, eyes widening even as his brow furrows. His shoulders rise in a stance Keith has started to associate with him being defensive. The panic in his eyes is all too clear, so Keith goes on before he bolts out from the room. "We kissed," he repeats, voice a lot softer and a lot kinder, words trailing off with a sigh. It feels good to get that out in the open. Lance's eyes are intense, and Keith finds the emotions dancing across them to be too much and too overwhelming, so his own gaze drifts down to the floor. His fingers tighten around his upper arms, jaw clenching reflexively. Yeah, we did it," he finally says, voice just as soft as Keith's had been. When Keith looks up, Lance is looking to the side, hand rubbing the back of his neck. "We did that." "Do you hate me?" "What?" Lance's gaze snaps to his, eyes wide and mouth hanging open. Keith holds his gaze, refusing to look away. "Do you hate me?" "What? No, why would I?" "Then why are you acting weird?" Lance gapes at him. "What? Me? You're acting weird!" Keith's brows furrow. "You started it." "You started it!" Keith sighs, lifting a hand to pinch the bridge of his nose, eyes closing. "Look, Lance." He lets his hand drop and he looks up through his bangs. Lance is watching him cautiously, the fire that had been building already gone out. He's chewing his bottom lip, and that shouldn't be as endearing as it is. Keith feels the irritation seeping from him. "Can we just go back to the normal?" He watches Lance's Adam's apple bob. He licks his lips before he echoes, "Normal?" "Yeah, normal. Back to how we were before." He waves a hand around. "It happened. We kissed at a club. It's no big deal. I don't want..." He cuts himself off, huffing as he looks away, shifting uncomfortably. "I don't want this to ruin our friendship. I just want us to be normal." He's silent for a while, and as the moment stretches, Keith feels the tension in him rising, stiffening his shoulders and tightening his arms over his chest. Then Lance speaks, and it's so casual and so calm that the tension dissolves instantly. "Yeah, we can do that." Keith looks up, breath stopping in his throat at the sight of Lance's smile. Small and cocky and genuine and so very Lance. That's what he's been missing, what he didn't realize he's been needing to see. The look in his eyes is so soft and filled with emotions that Keith doesn't want to name, and so focused on him that he has to consciously keep himself from fidgeting again. "Well, I can do that. Think you're up to the test, Mullet?" He feels his lips quirk into a small smirk. "What, no fancy name this time?"
Lance shrugs, crossing his arms over his chest and cocking his hip to the side. "I may or may not need to do more research." Keith snorts, pushing off the counter, and starts toward the kitchen entryway. He only gets a few steps before there's a hand on his arm, pulling him to a stop. He half turns, looking from the hand to Lance's face, quirking an eyebrow in question. He's searching Keith's face, chewing on his bottom lip again. But there's a spark of determination in those eyes that Keith knows all too well. It gives him chills. "So, he lifts his free hand to rub the back of his neck, but stops when he lifts his soda can. He stares at it for a moment like he forgot it was there, before shaking his head and turning to look back at Keith. Once their eyes catch, Keith feels like he can't look away. "I just wanted to ask, do you regret it?" His voice is so soft, filled with so much concern and worry that Keith doesn't hesitate before answering. "No," he says, voice surprisingly steady. Something about Lance shifts. It's subtle, hard to pinpoint, but the kicked puppy look evaporates like it had never been there to begin with, leaving a Lance who looks so wholly relaxed and happy. "Good," he says on an exhale, like he had been holding his breath. A smile curves his lips on the trail end of it. "Neither do I." Keith's heart stutters in his chest. He hadn't realized just how much he'd been hoping to hear those words, how much he needed to hear those words, how worried he had been if he didn't. His gut knots just as his stomach flutters, and it's such a contradicting feeling that it leaves him off kilter. Without his permission, he feels his lips curling into a small, sincere smile. "You know, just a couple of bros being bros," Lance says, voice light and teasing as his grin widens. "Just dudes kissing dudes." Keith's smile drops, and he groans, rolling his eyes. Don't ruin it. Keith tugs his arm out of Lance's grasp, and he lets go easily. Okay, but Keith, buddy, in all seriousness, I need to know, he asks, face dropping into a small frown as he pins Keith with his eyes. He might have pulled off the oh serious look if it weren't for the corners of his lips twitching upward again. Am I a good kisser? Keith groans again, rolling his eyes as he shoves Lance's shoulder hard enough to make him stumble back a few steps. I said, don't ruin it. Lance laughs as Keith leaves the kitchen, following close behind. Keith! I need to know! For science! 5 out of 7. Keith says over his shoulder, and when he glances back, he's pleased to find Lance has stopped and is gaping at him. Keith, did you just meme me? Keith raises an eyebrow, side of his lips curving upward into a small smirk. He tilts his head to the side. They'll never believe you. Lance gasps, hand to his chest. You're worse than Pidge! Pidge, your phone is vibrating. Hunk says, lobbing a piece of popcorn over the coffee table and cleanly into Lance's waiting mouth. 72? I know, but I'm trying to concentrate, they say, tossing a piece to Keith. He has to turn his head quickly to try to catch it, but he misses. It bounces off his nose onto the floor. He glares at it before picking it up to eat it begrudgingly. Lance giggles, biting his bottom lip to try to stifle the sound. Keith turns his head to the side to glare at him. Doesn't look like it's working, Hunk says thoughtfully, eating a piece of popcorn himself. Yeah, what's your number, Keith? Lance asks, grin wide enough to crinkle his eyes. Keith has to look away, heat rising up his neck. 57, he grumbles. You guys suck at this! Why are you so good at it? Keith asks, crossing his arms over his chest. Lance puts his hands behind his head, crossing his legs at the ankles, where they're resting propped up on the coffee table next to Keith's. He shrugs. Natural talent! Keith snorts indignantly and Lance chuckles. Don't be jealous of the dynamic duo up top, Hunk! Lance lifts a foot. Hunk slouches further on the couch and lifts a foot to press it to Lance's. I blame Keith, Pidge mumbles, reaching for their phone as they eat a few pieces from the bowl in their lap. The third Shrek movie has just started and is playing on the TV, but none of them are paying any attention anymore. He's not even sure how they got into this position, but he's certain it has something to do with Lance's competitive streak and his inability to turn down a challenge. Next thing he knows, they're lying side by side on the floor while Pidge and Hunk throw popcorn across the room at them. He can't complain too much, though. After their short talk in the kitchen, things between them has been a lot better. The awkward tension is all but dissipated and gone like it had never been there to begin with. In its wake is a new kind of tension. A much more subtle one. One that shows itself in sideways glances, small smiles, playful teasing. It's... Keith doesn't know what it is, but it's not bad, so he'll take it. They spent most of the second movie sitting next to each other on the couch, playfully kicking each other before Pidge got tired of it and sat on both their legs. They both then proceeded to poke at Pidge instead. Who is it? Hunk asks curiously, leaning over to loom over Pidge, eyes on their thumb. Yeah, who's blowing up your digits, little pigeon? Lance asks from his spot on the floor. Pidge just makes a short, amused sound. It's just Matt. He's complaining that Shiro is doing the thing again. Hunk raises both brows. What thing? Keith snorts. He's planning his first date with Allura again, isn't he? Yep. Oh, that's so cute. Hunk coos. It would be cute if he actually got the nerve to ask her. Keith deadpans. Instead of telling Matt all about it, who then tells me about it, which I then tell Keith about it. Pidge continues. And now you guys, I guess. I think he's planned like 12 first dates at this point. Whoa, whoa! Lance pushes himself up on his elbows, looking between them. Shiro! Plans his first dates with Allura? A slow smile was creeping over his lips. Keith shrugs with one shoulder. If you could call it that. More like he hypothetically plans dates and talks to Matt about it, but we all know he's doing it with Allura in mind, Pidge adds. He gets so into it that he doesn't notice when Matt puts on his headphones and zones out. Lance pulls his feet off the table, crossing his legs under him as he sits up. Oh man, this is great! He laughs, grin wide. Allura does the same thing! They all stare at him, but it's Hunk who speaks. How do you know that? Lance shrugs, grin, turning mysterious. She tells me about it sometimes, and when she does it, she's telling Corinne about it, and he does the same thing with me that Matt is doing with Pidge. Bro, Hunk almost looks hurt. You never told me that. Lance gives him an apologetic look. Sorry, buddy, but you told me in confidence. It's bro code. Keith snorts. Didn't stop me from telling us now. Lance gives him a small half scowl, half pout, and shoves him. Keith just chuckles under his breath, and they exchange small smiles. Anyway, Lance says, clapping his hands together, point is, those two were completely hopeless and have been for years. They're both planning dates that they refuse to ask the other out on. Hunk scratches his chin thoughtfully. I can't tell if that's cute and endearing or just sad. It's just plain sad, Pidge offers. Seconded. Keith adds, I have an idea, Lance announces, and they all turn to look at him. He is grinning and takes a moment to make eye contact with all of them. He does it like he's trying to build suspense, but Keith already has an idea of where he's going with this. We should set them up on their first date! Yep, there it is. They're all silent for a moment, then Hunk breaks it. How are we going to do that? Lance is ready with an answer. We get Matt and Corinne to bring them to the same place at the same time, where we've set up the best and most awesome and most memorable first date ever! Lance, Keith starts, but Pidge cuts him off. No, please! This might just work! They all turn to stare at Pidge. Even Lance looks surprised. Really? He asks, then shakes his head, crossing his arms over his chest. I mean, yeah, of course it will! I'm a genius! Yeah, really? Pidge continues, tapping their chin on their phone. Think about it. We're all tired of them dancing around each other. Pun intended. They add, high-fiving Hunk. They're basically dating anyway, but both of them refuse to just do it. So why don't we just give them the shove they need? Hunk comes thoughtfully. It could be pretty fun. Keith sighs, pulling his feet down from the table to sit up. He knows at this point he's going to be pulled into it, regardless, so he might as well jump on board. Besides, he's tired of watching his brother pine uselessly when the girl he loves is so obviously head over heels for him. It's just embarrassing at this point. He runs his fingers through his hair. Okay, but what date do we do? Lance claps a hand on his shoulder. Just leave that to me. I'm great with plans. Part of him wants to challenge that claim, the side of him that always wants to challenge a bucket Lance. But he looks so genuinely excited, eyes sparkling, so Keith just shrugs. All right. His smile dims a fraction. Well, that's it! Keith shrugs again, lips quirking into a small smile. Yep, I don't have any ideas, so... They share small, genuine smiles. This shit has gotta be over the top, Pidge cuts in. Nothing says over the top like Lance. I'm in. Lance tears his eyes away from Keith to glare at Pidge. I'm going to take that as a compliment. In this case, it was one. I'm in too, Hunk says. This is going to be great. They all look at Keith. I'm in. Yes! Lance shouts, throwing a fist into the air. Operation Parent Trap is a go! Hunk laughs. Ooh, nice name, buddy. Lance rubs his nails on his shirt, smiling smugly. Thanks, buddy! He pushes himself to his feet, stretching his arms over his head until his back pops. Don't worry, I won't let you guys down. I'm going to plan the most tooth-rottingly sweet first date ever. I believe in your ability to make this gross, Pidge says. He's already walking down the hallway towards the bathroom, but he turns to walk backwards so he can shoot finger guns at Pidge. While he's gone, do you think we can catch up on points? Pidge asks as soon as they hear the bathroom door close. Keith looks up to see them positioned with a piece of popcorn held in their fingers, ready to throw. He shrugs, leaning back on his hands and opening his mouth. I'm pretty sure that's cheating, Hunk says. Pidge throws anyway, and Keith manages to catch it. Lance would do the same thing, they say. Hunk hums thoughtfully, then nods. Good point. He leans back. Carry on. They get 2 more throws in before there's suddenly a loud scream coming from across the apartment. They all jump and Keith whips around just in time to see the bathroom door being thrown open and Lance hurling himself through it. Hunk! He shouts, scrambling fast enough that he nearly trips and runs on all fours for a second before gaining his feet again. His eyes are wide and what Keith can only describe as pure panic. Lance, what? Hunk! He reaches the couch and scrambles up on the arm of it, practically throwing himself across the cushions. Hunk! Bathroom! Spider! Han! Hunk! Get Han! Keith watches in complete bewilderment as Hunk sighs, pushing himself to his feet and walking across the living room with all the calmness in the world. He heads out of sight toward the front door, and Keith turns back to the other two. Lance looks like he's simultaneously trying to crawl in Pidge's lap and curl around him. Pidge is desperately trying to shove him off. Lance! Get off! Hunk comes back and pauses in the living room. Keith looks at him, both eyebrows raised. Juan? Hunk nods solemnly and lifts the shoe. Juan. And then he heads down the hallway toward the bathroom. Be careful, Hunk! It's huge! Lance, where is it? Hunk calls from the bathroom. On the wall between the toilet and the shower, right at base level. It almost jumped on my face, Hunk! Oh, Lance, it's not that big. Kill it, Hunk! Murder it with pawn! There's a loud sigh, followed by a muffled thump. Hunk comes back out, pausing as he enters the living room and smiling as he holds up his shoe. Got it. Hunk! Juan! My hero! Lance leaps up from where he's half crushing Pidge into the cushions, sprints across the couch, and leaps towards Hunk. Hunk must be used to this because he catches Lance without a second thought. Keith looks to where Pidge is pushing hair out of their face. What just happened? Pidge huffs, sending a mild glare toward Lance. He's terrified of spiders and always makes Hunk kill them. He nicknamed Hunk's left shoe Juan Shoe the Savior. Now whenever he sees a bug in the apartment, he calls for Juan. Keith raises an eyebrow. Specifically the left one? They nod. Specifically the left one. Keith looks back to where Hunk is holding Lance up, an amused look on his face as Lance sings praises of him and Juan. Without really thinking about it, Keith feels his face relax, lips quirking at the corners in amusement as a strange warm feeling starts up in his chest. It's so dramatic and so ridiculous, but so amusing and so endearing and so incredibly Lance! When Lance catches him watching, he rolls out of Hunk's grasp, grabs the shoe, and crawls across the floor to make introductions. The entire time he goes about this over-the-top speech about the incredible Juan and the many times he's been saved, Keith can't look away from his face, so animated and expressive. Every time Keith laughs, Lance's enthusiasm is spurred on. Keith notices that his cheeks vaguely ache from smiling. It's a strange feeling. He's cute. The thought comes to him unbidden and with a fluttering echo in his chest, followed quickly by a sinking sensation in his stomach and a mildly horrifying, oh no. By 7 o'clock on Friday night, Lance and Keith are both waiting outside the dance studio's back door. Matt pulls up with Shiro first. After he parks, he guides his blindfolded roommate out of the car and across the parking lot. Special delivery! He calls out, one hand on Shiro's arm. Shiro frowns. Matt, what are you... Thanks, Matt! Lance? The man's eyebrows shoot upward, frown deepening. He sees Shiro stiffen and his steps falter, but Matt just tugs it forward. What's going on? I told you not to worry about it, Matt says. And that's exactly why I'm worrying about it. Just shut up and trust us, Keith says, sounding exasperated already. Keith? They come to a stop in front of them, and Shiro turns his head like he's trying to look between them. His brows furrow. No, I'm definitely worried. Ha ha. Keith deadpans. Thanks, Matt. We'll take it from here. No problem, Matt says, letting go of Shiro's arm and stepping away. He shoves his hands in his pockets and rocks back on his heels, smiling a lopsided grin that reminds him entirely of Pidge. I expect him home before 10. No promises, Lance says with a wink. Both Sheath and Shiro groan again, which earns laughter from Lance and Matt. The latter takes a couple steps backwards and waves. Later, guys. Good luck. Tell Pidge to send me video. Will do, Lance calls. Pidge is here too? Video of what? Keith sighs, taking Shiro's arm and pulling him toward the door. Don't worry about it. Can I take this blindfold off now? Nope, Keith says, popping the P sound. As he walks through the door, the glances over his shoulder at Lance, who gives him a smile and a thumbs up. Keith's returning smile is small but entirely too endearing for his own good. Or for Lance's own good. He turns away and lets his eyes sweep across the parking lot. Corinne arrives not too long after. He pulls right up to the door and doesn't even bother turning the car off before he's out the door and hopping around to the other side. Hey, Corinne! Lance greets. The older man grins, giving him a once-over. Lance, my boy, you look positively dashing! Lance smirks, holding an extended thumb and forefinger to his chin. Like always! Corinne opens the passenger side door and holds out a hand for Allura as she slips out of the car. Corinne, where are we? Did I hear? Evening, princess! Lance? The one and only! Her brows furrow. What's going on? Do you trust me? Corinne asks. Allura's look softens. You know I do. Then trust me when I say, he guides her forward and places her hand in Lance's, that they will take good care of you. Her face scrunches up, but she resigns herself with a reluctant, all right. Good luck, Corinne says, skipping around to the driver's side of his car. Do tell Pidge to send me video, won't you? Will do. Thanks, Corinne. Video? Don't worry about it, princess, he says smoothly, taking her hand gently and guiding her through the door. It clicks softly shut behind them. I do wish you would stop calling me that. No can do. Tonight, you are a princess. Lance, where is this going? She asks wearily, practically dragging her feet and suddenly tugging against Lance's hold in her own apprehension. You'll see, he sings softly, pulling her into the elevator and pressing the button for the second floor. When it dings open, he pulls her around down the hall. Are we at the studio? He pauses mid-step, glancing at her curiously. How can you tell? A small smile curves her lips. It felt like that's the way Corinne was going. Plus, we hit that pothole on the way to the back parking lot that we've been meaning to fix. Not to mention I've known the layout of this place since I was a child. It smells the same, too. Lance laughs, continuing to walk her along. That's some impressive detective work. Now can you guess why you're here? I haven't a clue, she says in honest bafflement. He grins. Good. He looks forward to the surprise. When he reaches room 2A, he opens the door and guides her in. Keith and Shiro are already there, Keith with one hand on Shiro's arm and Shiro positioned on the far side of the small table next to one of the chairs. At the sound of the door, his head shifts. Who's that? Shiro? Allura? Lance, what's going on? He doesn't say anything as he sets her up across the table from Shiro. He exchanges a look with Keith before they're both reaching up to pull off the blindfolds. They both step back, standing side by side as they wait for the two of them to take in their surroundings. He's not disappointed. The first thing they see is each other, eyes locking for a long moment before they take in what the other is wearing. Corinne and Matt had told them to dress nicely, but hadn't told them where they were going. As their gazes roam down the other, they see the table between them. A simple, round, two-person table dressed up with a dark red tablecloth. There's 2 sets of plates and silverware and a small vase at the center with a single rose. Next to it is a bucket of ice with a bottle of wine. From there, their gazes drift around the room. The room itself is Lance's masterpiece. It's their usual practice room, but he's put some serious elbow grease into sprucing it up. The walls have tapestries of rich fabric in dark colors hung up around them to block out the windows and walls. The edges of the room has candles everywhere, some in clusters and some scattered, all lit to create a soft, warm glow around the edges. Various vases of roses are positioned with candle clusters, as well as rose petals scattered about. The whole mood is brought together by the lighting, where Pidge had replaced some of the lights with colored bulbs, turning them down power and positioned them so the whole room was cast in purples and pinks. And the pièce de résistance is the wall-length mirror, reflecting the whole scene back to them. He worked hard to create a romantic, cozy, and intimate atmosphere out of the place where they've spent the most time together. And yeah, it costed them quite a pretty penny to get everything, but Corinne covered half the expenses on his own, and they split the remaining cost. It was worth it for Shiro and Allura. Lance watches them, unable to hide his wide grin. They both look like a wonderful mix of shock and awe. The lighting, the combination of the colored light up from above and the soft candlelit from below, reflects off their eyes. Allura's seem to sparkle, but not nearly as much as Shiro's when he looks at her. He sees the moment they finish absorbing their surroundings, and the whole implication of them really starts to set in. He sees the slight widening of their eyes, the way Shiro's lips purse in his "I'm trying to hide a blush" face, the way Allura's jaw drops as she gasps and her hands go to her chest, the way both of their complexions seem to get darker despite the already dim lighting. They stare at each other, and slowly, so slowly it takes Lance a moment to see it, they smile. Their expressions soften and their entire bodies relax for the first time since they arrived. The moment is suddenly weirdly private and intensely intimate, and Lance finds he has to look away. He makes the mistake of looking at Keith. They're both dressed to the nines. Karan had taken them out to get matching outfits for the occasion. Tightly fitted black slacks, shoes to match, and black vests with matching colored button-ups underneath. Lance's is a deep blue and Keith's is a dark red. They both have their shirts rolled up to the elbows and it shows off Keith's forearms nicely. At Lance's insistence, they both slicked their hair back. They just wanted to go all out with the whole fancy theme they have going on. He knew he'd look good, but he wasn't expecting the way his heart went into overdrive when Keith came out of the bathroom with his hair slicked back and out of his face. Or for how endearing it was when he shuffled his weight from foot to foot and looked up at Lance through his lashes to ask if he looked all right in a low mumble. Looking at Keith now, Lance sees the flaws in his plan. He knows he looks good. He can feel it. He sees it in the mirror. He pulls off the look fantastically. He had expected as much. What he hadn't expected was how good Keith would look. If he looks good, Keith looks phenomenal. Looking at him now, seeing the lighting play off his pale complexion, seeing the way the clothes fit him in all the right places, seeing the soft, amused smile on his lips as he watches his brother, seeing the way he stands relaxed with his arms crossed loosely over his chest, he takes his breath away. And then Keith is turning to look at him, and Lance is captured by those dark eyes. He could feel his excited grin is still fixed in place, and Keith's smile widens just a fraction in response. Then he winks, and Lance feels his heart stutter in his chest. He doesn't have time to dwell on it, however, because Shiro and Allura have turned to them, taking in their outfits for the first time. Guys? Shiro says, snapping their attention back to him. What's going on? He asks, but his words are slow and cautious. Clearing his throat, Lance drops into a graceful and practiced bow. Welcome to the Altea kitchen! Keith and I will be your waiters this evening. Hunk has already prepared a lovely meal for you both, which will be serving shortly. He straightens and smoothly steps up behind Allura, pulling out her chair and gesturing to it. We invite you to sit, and we hope you enjoy your evening. Allura stares at him blankly, then to the chair, then to Shiro. He shrugs, and she sits, with a hand on the back of her chair. Lance looks to Keith. He hasn't moved. Lance puts a fist to his mouth and clears his throat loudly. Keith raises an eyebrow, and Lance looks pointedly to Shiro's seat. Keith follows his gaze, stares, and then heaves a heavy sigh, shoulders slumping in defeat as he goes to pull the chair out for his brother. Once they're both sitting, Keith works on uncorking the bottle of wine. When he does, he passes it to Lance, who pours for them both. So, Shiro rubs the back of his neck. What's the occasion? Allura mumbles a soft thanks to Lance and takes her glass, lifting it to her lips to sip. You're on your first date, Keith says bluntly, lips curling into a small smirk as Allura chokes on her wine, and Shiro gapes at him, scar being thrown into stark relief against his blush. Willing you two though now, Lance says, grabbing hold of Keith's wrist and tugging him away from the table. We'll be back shortly with the appetizers, he calls out behind him as he shuts the door. They're halfway to the stairs before Lance realizes he's still holding Keith's arm and lets go. He covers up his embarrassment by raising Keith down the stairs. The rest of the date goes smoothly. Hunk had prepared the food at their apartment and brought it over after Shiro and Allura showed up. He set up shop in the studio's meager half-kitchen break room, and they finished off the dishes as best they could. Pidge, being the little tech gremlin they are, set up a subtle camera in the room so they could keep an eye on the date, as well as hooked the sound system up to their own portable remote. As soon as Keith and Lance left, they started to play soft music to further set the mood. They bring up the appetizers, followed by the main course, and later dessert. They keep an eye on the two through the camera feed to see when they're needed, but other than that, they leave the two alone. The awkward tension dissolves somewhere after the appetizer, and it's not long before the two of them are leaning across the table, smiling, and absorbed in conversation. As it turns out, there's a lot more downtime than they were anticipating. With the food already prepared, they spent a lot of time simply waiting for Shiro and Allura to be ready for the next course. After some rummaging, Hunk manages to find a few decks of cards, and the four of them sit on the break room table to play several rounds of take. They pause whenever Pidge decides it's time for the next course, and Keith and Lance have to hurry upstairs. When they've been done with dessert for long enough that they're both starting to look fidgety, Lance declares that it's time for phase 2 of the date. He and Keith head upstairs and push into the room. With a flourish, they pull Shiro and Allura to their feet, each grab a chair under one arm, and use their free hands to carry the table between them as they shuffle toward the door. It goes so quick that Allura and Shiro are left standing there, staring after them. They both manage a few half-formed questions, but Lance just shoots them a wide smile before closing the door. He and Keith leave the table and chairs out in the hall before sprinting back down to the break room. "Did we miss it?" Lance asks, bursting into the room. "Nope, we were just about to start," Pidge says, pulling their laptop into their lap, where they sit cross-legged on the table. Lance hurries into the room, Keith right behind him. Hunk sits on the table behind Pidge, leaning over them to watch the camera feed. Lance props his ass up on the table next to Pidge, one foot dangling and the other resting on one of the chairs as he leans in. Keith crosses his arms over his chest, leaning against the table on Pidge's other side to watch the screen. It shows Shiro and Allura standing around awkwardly in the middle of the open dance room, surrounded by the soft atmosphere Lance has so painstakingly crafted. Shiro rubs the back of his neck, and Allura idly rubs one arm. But they're standing close, and they're both smiling. Then Pidge cuts off the music that's been playing and turns on the song that Keith had picked out. He assures them that it was the first dance the two of them had choreographed and performed together. Lance watches with building excitement as the two of them recognize the song, eyes shyly finding each other, smiles replacing surprised expressions. Then Allura holds out a hand, and Shiro takes it. Watching them dance has always been breathtaking, but this is on a whole different level. Here, they're not dancing for a crowd. They're dancing for each other. Their steps and movements are memorized, but there's a loose and languid quality about them that speaks of easy comfort. They're not dancing to be perfect. They're dancing to be together. And it shows. That, combined with the whole atmosphere of the room, makes Lance's chest feel full and heavy with emotions. Mostly happiness for his friends. None of them talk as they all watch with rapt attention. Lance is pretty sure the others are holding their breath too. Lance spares a glance at the others. Hunk looks like he's about to cry. Pidge's expression is soft and adorable. And Keith is smiling, this small, genuine smile, and his eyes are so dark, and he just looks so happy. Lance looks back to the screen, ignoring the increase in his heart rate. The dance itself is pretty simple from Shiro's side. He's mostly just there to guide and support Allura as she does all the beautiful and complicated moves. But there's a history there. As their first choreographed dance, it's one they did with the intention of getting Shiro used to dancing, one they did with the intention of learning how to work with his prosthetic, one they did while they were building trust and getting to know each other as partners. As the song comes to an end, Keith leans toward Pidge, nudging them with his shoulder. "Did you set up the thing I asked you to?" he mumbles. There's no need to whisper, but the air in the room feels too heavy not to. Even then, his voice is almost startling in the silence. Pidge nods, small smile curling into something more mischievous. "Yep." On the screen, Shiro and Allura are standing close. His hands are resting loosely on her waist, her hands on his chest. They're gazing at each other and have been for a solid several seconds. Do it. Pidge hits a button on the music player and suddenly Kiss the Girl is blasting loudly from the chorus. Both of them jump, heads whipping up to look around the room, faces on guard in their surprise. Lance sees Shiro stiffen as his face morphs into one of mortification, his jaw going slack. Allura, on the other hand, throws back her head and laughs. Before Shiro can say anything, she grabs him and dips him. They see his eyes widen in surprise before his face is out of sight and Allura is kissing him. They all cheer loudly. Pidge's laptop nearly slipping off their lap in their excitement. Yes! Lance throws a fist into the air. Finally! Pidge throws both hands up into the air as they shout. About damn time, Keith says. Go, Allura! Oh my god, guys, that was beautiful. Hunk is saying. Hands on Pidge's shoulders, he shakes them back and forth. I can't believe that happened! Nice touch for the song, Keith, Pidge says, lightly punching him in the arm. His smile curls a little wider. It was payback. And then on screen, Allura is standing Shiro up again, and they all have a clear view of his awestruck face, complexion dark with a flush. He looks absolutely stunned. And they all laugh. And for what feels like the 1000th time that night, Lance makes the mistake of looking at Keith. He's laughing so hard that his eyes are crinkling, bent at the waist as it bubbles out of him. Lance has heard his laugh plenty of times before, but that doesn't stop it from making his heart jump into his throat. Then Keith is looking at him, grin wide and eyes sparkling as he wipes away a tear. His pale cheeks are flushed, and with his hair slicked back, Lance can see the entirety of his face, beautiful in his mirth. He's cute! The thought, so innocent and so genuine, comes unbidden, flitting across his mind as his stomach flutters, followed shortly after by a clenching in his chest and a sense of dread. Oh no.